Hello, and welcome to Impact the Boro, a podcast from the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce. I'm Brent Christensen, the President and CEO of the Chamber. Each week, we'll highlight what we're doing to start and grow businesses, create quality jobs, and develop our workforce. We'll also check in with our community partners to share inspiring stories and important information from across our community. This podcast is brought to you by Truliant Federal Credit Union, a modern, mission-driven financial institution focused on the needs of its members, the businesses it serves, and our community. With 5 locations in Guilford County, including a dedicated commercial lending office at Friendly Center and a highly rated mobile banking app, Truliant makes it their business to help you grow yours. Visit Truliant.org for more information.
Hi, everyone. This is Cecelia Thompson, Executive Director of Action Greensboro. I'm excited today to introduce you to 3 2021 Grammy nominees who are right here in Greensboro and talk about why that's significant and why Greensboro might be a hub for Grammy winners. Today, we have Dominic Amendum, who has received a Grammy nomination for Best Musical Theater Album for Stephen Schwartz's new musical, Prince of Egypt. Dominic's nomination is for his role as producer on the cast album of Prince of Egypt. Welcome, Dominic.
Great to be here.
We also have 2 special nominees for the 2021 Music Educator Award that's presented by the Recording Academy and Grammy Museum. Brian McMath, welcome Brian, is currently in his 24th year as educator and 17th year as the Director of Bands at Northwest Guilford High School in Greensboro. While at Northwest Guilford, Brian's bands have received recognition for their growth, discipline, and individual member achievements. Members of the class bands, both the concert band, symphonic band, and wind ensemble, are consistently chosen for various all-county, all-district, and honor bands across the state. At least 30 alumni from Brian's programs are now music educators, or they're pursuing careers in music education, so passing along that gift. I'm also excited to welcome Donnie Walter, who's the Director of Orchestras at Northwest Guilford High School and Northwest Guilford Middle School. Also, he's the orchestra section chair for the North Carolina Music Educators Association. While at Northwest Schools, Mr. Walter has doubled the enrollment in the middle school orchestra program and increased enrollment to more than 90 in the high school program. As a product of band and orchestra as a child, I honor you and I'm excited to chat with you and the impact that you make on students' lives and adults' lives all over. So I want to kick off this conversation about Greensboro and the Grammys. And is there something interesting and sticky about Greensboro as a producer of music talent? And it brings me back to this article that I read many years ago. It is an article in 2014 by Richard Florida, who is a writer and researcher and economist. And he wrote this piece called The Narrow Geography of the Grammy Awards. And it looked at cities across the United States and where Grammy winners and Grammy nominees were coming from. And it was interesting because there's sort of these traditional cities that you think about as places where Grammy nominees live. They live in New York, they live in LA, and they live in Nashville, even more and more lately, from pop music to country music. And one of the things that Richard Florida looked at was where Grammy nominees are per capita across the country. So per million people, where do these folks live? And so when he looked at the geography across the country and recognized that some music talent was moving. So Taylor Swift grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and Macklemore, I think, was from Seattle, but then relocated to LA. There's sort of this transient nature of where people grow up and where they're educated, and then where they end up sort of grow their careers. But there's also kind of smaller hubs where music is thriving. And so when Richard Florida looked at per capita, I thought this was really interesting. He said that pop music's more spread out geography becomes clearer when we track the location of artists and acts on a per capita basis, comparing top honors to population of the entire metro area. Now, if you look at it per capita, Nashville far outperforms Los Angeles with the equivalent of 9.2 Grammy nominations per million residents. And surprisingly, he looked at other smaller metros that outperformed Los Angeles and found that Memphis, Auckland, and Greensboro, North Carolina was on that list. So that equated to 1.9 nominees per million residents. So when I read that article in 14, I was like, there's something to this, and it's been in my head for a while. And then when I noticed that we had 3 nominees this year, I thought, let's have a conversation and dig a little deeper into this. So my first question for you guys is, does this information from 2014 surprise you? And if so, why? And if it doesn't surprise you, why not? So let's start with Brian.
The information kind of surprises me to a degree when you first hear about it, because it's not something I would readily take on as being out there and sort of prevalent to my world and what I think of as far as music education. It doesn't surprise me because I do know my alma mater, UNCG, like everyone else here, has an incredible school of music, and it has for many, many, many decades. And I think it's just continuing to grow and is sought after by a lot of people for performing or education or theater, things of that nature. So it doesn't surprise me of what it's cultivating. It's just nice, I guess, now to think that it's being recognized on a national stage in a different way, with something everybody knows about, which is the Grammy title.
Yeah, so following up with that, UNCG was just announced on January 4th. Their School of Music was ranked #1 in the 20 best colleges for music in 2020. So UNCG's history of doing wonderful things with music has gone on for a long time and is receiving recognition nationally, which, it's really cool to know that you picked the right school to go to.
Well, and I would just dovetail off that to say that having a program like that in our backyard that's been so strong for so long just breeds a great musical culture around the city of Greensboro. So I don't think it's a surprise that there's great music happening here, given this amazing training program in our backyard. I'd also say, when it comes to recording, those 3 big centers, New York, LA, Nashville, had the infrastructure to support recording and recording artists, and they had all the great studios, they had all the great engineers and producers, were all kind of based in these places. And over the last really 10 years, what's changed is that anyone with a laptop and a decent mic can make great music. So we've seen just kind of a diversification of what people can do, and there are fantastic bands who are recording in their living room in a cabin in the mountains, and turning out great music. So I think the necessity to live in one of these big centers is not, it's not there as much as it used to be 10 years or more ago.
Dominic, I think that's so interesting to think about accessibility to recording technology right now. And that could be something of the future that Greensboro capitalizes on. It's how do we make sure that we're retaining the great talent that's coming out of our music programs, but also can we be a place that can attract music talent because of our scene here, because of the culture, but also because of just, I think, the overwhelming sort of benefits of living in Greensboro, right? Great quality of life, low cost of living, et cetera. So it gets my gears turning a little bit about what we could build on in the future to make it even a bigger hub for Grammy winners.
Absolutely.
So I want to shift gears and talk to you a little about your nominations. And I want to start with Brian and Donnie. I want to congratulate you again for this special honor. I think it's really significant that just 10 music educators from 10 cities across the 8 states were advanced to this final round for a Music Educator Award. And they said 10 cities, but actually that represents 2 cities within the county of Guilford County. And that you are both working within Guilford County schools, which I think is so amazing, and a dedication to our public school system and the children that are in your programs. And so I'll start with you, Donnie. What does this recognition mean to you? And can you share a little about what you're feeling right now?
Well, it's absolutely fantastic. I never thought in my life I would be nominated for a Grammy Award. So it's really flattering. It's reinforcing that what I'm doing is going well. And of course, even though our names are on it, we have a big support network which helps us out. the students, the families, the schools that we work at, and our own personal families, supporting us doing all of these things. And so it feels great to be recognized for this. It's also a responsibility. Now we got to live up to it. If we've been named that we're in the top 10 in the country for something, well, we better actually prove that we know what we're doing. Brian?
Absolutely. And Brian, I also want to mention that there was nearly 2,000 nominations from 50 states. And so, when you think about, there was 10 selected, how many were nominated? You guys are really the cream at the top in terms of those 2,000 nominations. And so, Brian, what does this mean to you?
Usually I'm someone I think that has a lot of words to say, at least that's what I'm told by people. And this is very much, I'm still in disbelief. Number one, I was extremely honored to be nominated. And then we went to quarterfinalists and I was like, okay, that's phenomenal. 250 out of 2,000, that's incredible. And then it went to semifinalists, and it's where you start shaking and you're nervous, and it's just a total of disbelief. And then when Donnie and I both ended up getting the call, that we were finalists in December, I still don't have the words for it. I'm ecstatic. I'm humbled that people validate what I'm doing and believe in what I'm doing. I think it's an amazing kind of justification or recognition for, as Donnie said, our kids, but especially our community. I know that the arts community in Northwest Greensboro is amazing. So the fact that we are two educators from the same state is a big deal, but then we're also from the same county. But some people start to forget we are at the same school and we teach together and have for, I don't even know how many years now, Donnie, that we've literally taught together, 14 years. And we've done a lot of things of vertical team alignment between the two of us, concerts together, supporting each other, hosting festivals together. So it's a great friendship, but it's also an incredible colleague situation, which I know I'm very fortunate to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting to Northwest High School, I got to the Northwest schools a couple of years after Brian, so he had already started laying the groundwork. And then for the first 9 years, I was at the middle school only, teaching both orchestra and band. And then in the past 5 years, I've switched to teaching orchestra between the middle school and the high school. And Brian has been a great colleague that whole time and really done a fantastic job leading the music department and the arts department at Northwest. So we often kid around that Northwest should be the Northwest School of the Arts.
I like it. And we have another magnet school for the arts. And so in addition to the great work that you guys are doing, there's also the Weaver Academy. And so I think it really makes this community stand out as a place that recognizes and supports arts education and the development of music in our school system, and I think in our overall culture. So it's a place to visit or move to if you're interested in that kind of thing. So I want to shift over to Dominic, who is on staff at UNCG, but also is nominated this year for his contribution to the Prince of Egypt. And so you mentioned that you were working as music supervisor and arranger when Prince of Egypt opened in the Dominion Theatre in London's West End on February the 25th, 2020, which is all sort of a date that we can resonate with all around the world right before everything shut down. So Dom, can you tell us about the Prince of Egypt, and can you talk about sort of that opening night and probably just the forthcoming wave of changes as the virus hit, and how that's impacted you and the show?
Yeah, well, like most shows that I work on, Prince of Egypt went through a really long development process. So the opening in London was the culmination of about 7 years of development on the show. We did the first reading of the show, I guess it was about 6 years, at Bay Street Theater out in the Hamptons, and then did various readings in New York and productions in California and Denmark and various places to kind of try out the show out of the the spotlight of large press outlets and things like that. And so to finally get to open the kind of definitive production of the show after that much time and that much, blood, sweat, and tears, quite literally in some cases, is just a tremendous honor. Also, to work on that particular show, people have such a relationship with the animated feature film, and the just incredible epic score that accompanied it. And to work with Stephen Schwartz, of course, it was just really a highlight of my professional career for sure. And so, it's a huge relief to get a show open. It's a huge, after many months of hard rehearsals, and in this case, recording a cast album, to finally get to that opening night is just a great relief and great source of pride. And then, of course, a few weeks later, to have your show close along with every other show around the world, pretty much was an experience kind of at the other end of the emotional spectrum, I would say. And so, we've all dealt with the closing of the show as best we can. We have an amazing group of producers who plan to open the show back up when it's safe to do so in London. And so the cast has been keeping in touch. We have regular Zoom check-ins. Our amazing music director in London has been sending them little review practice tracks and things to keep them up on the music. And, so we're all kind of biding our time as we wait to see when the show can come back. It was a special kind of disappointment to open a show and then just a few weeks later have it have to close in that way. But I would say one of the greatest things we did was recording this cast album that is now nominated. We did it much earlier in the process than you usually do for a musical. At that time, we didn't know how wonderful that would turn out to be, because had we not done it when we did it, it would not have been done. So to walk away from the show with this cast album that now gets this recognition is so great, because the cast album is still out there for people to listen to, even though the show isn't.
That's a good plug for listeners to find the cast album and listen to it and resonate with the fact that a Greensboro resident had a big role in that album. Dominic, in thinking about sort of your start at UNCG and the journey that you got to this nomination, what does the recognition mean to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, as Brian and Donnie said, it's incredibly humbling. It's incredibly exciting. I knew the day the nominations were coming out, the only person I had breathed a word of it to was my wife. And otherwise, I was sitting here in my office at the university alone, watching the live stream, just kind of wondering, like, is it going to happen? And, so it's exciting. It's humbling. It's something that I, didn't really imagine would happen. I don't think you don't do the work because you're hoping for a nomination. And I'm sure the same is true for Donnie and Brian. You do the work because you love it. In their case, you love educating these kids. You do it because of your passion. So to have a recognition like this is just so kind of the icing on the cake. I would also say, for me, I've worked in theater now for a long time. And so, the Tony Awards are a big deal, but my training and my background is as a musician. So to be honored with a nomination for an award that specifically speaks to the music industry is just a tremendous honor.
That's a great point. Well, when you're nominated for a Tony, we'll have another podcast.
Please do.
Yeah. So I want to go back to sort of this piece around the connection between Greensboro and the Grammys. And Brian, I want to ask you, you mentioned your tenure at Northwest. I think with this recognition, you could probably choose to teach wherever you wanted to. You could go to a fancy private boarding school. You could, go to any county across the country. What makes Guilford County special, and what keeps you here? What's kept you here, I would say, in your tenure at Northwest?
For me, I grew up not too far from here. So I'm sort of a local boy in North Carolina, born and bred. So it's home. And it's important to me for that. I never looked at really traveling far away or to the most, prestigious schools with the most money and the most support of those areas. My goal was always to want to build something and not take over something. I wanted to kind of leave my own mark, so to speak. And being close to home, that's always allowed my parents to participate in every concert and every trip and every competition that my kids have ever taken, and they've been extremely supportive of that. You know, when I got to Northwest, it was kind of a big goal because I knew of the program that Tommy Smith started and built for 20 some years before I ever got there. And I wanted to bring it new into, you know, another era and another decade with what we're looking at doing. And I wanted to inspire. So Greensboro is home because I went to school here, of course, but it's, you know, it has so much theater, it has so much music, it is such an arts advocate environment to be in. You know, my kids could be a part of anything they wanted to, and with the School of Music and all the places around, they can get private lessons, they can get extra training. You know, it just breeds itself, which is what has made me stay here for all of those options with the amazing community support that my school particularly, I feel like it has. I know our parents would move heaven and earth and any mountain in our way to get these kids what they need to be successful, because that's all we care about. So that's really why I stayed.
I think that's a really good point that you make, and from your position, I think it's particularly interesting. People who we talk to that are really talented, like yourself, often talk about Greensboro as a place where they can create something. They can build something that they're passionate about, that they know will make an impact on the community, rather than maybe moving to a larger metro area and sort of taking over someone's legacy to continue. It's really about creating your own thing. And so I think that's special. I think the other piece that you mentioned that I hadn't thought about was the connection between the students in public schools and UNCG's music program, or North Carolina A&T, or other music programs from our 7 colleges and universities. You know, growing up in a college town and being in the band and the orchestra, I had lessons from college students that were, were majoring in music and playing the same instrument, or was involved in the music program at the University of Florida. And so I think that's such an important tie, and something that I'm thrilled to hear that connection exists here. So Dominic, I want to hear from you about, your role as a member of the Center for Visual and Performing Arts and the coordinator of the music theater program at UNCG. But I also am curious because you were a boomerang. We call people boomerangs who have been in Greensboro for a point in time. You went to UNCG, you left, and you came back. We love boomerangs. We want more of them. That'll be another podcast about boomerangs later this year. So can you talk about what you're doing here in Greensboro and why you came back and what makes it a special place for you?
Yeah, well, the training I got at UNCG is such a big part of the career I had and the success I found when I moved to New York, and the work I was able to do. So I've always been passionate about giving back to the university and giving back to this community that really was such a big part of my development. My family, much of my family is in North Carolina in the Charlotte area. So it was also a bit of a homecoming for me to get to come back closer to my parents and my siblings. But I think the big thing was both what was already here, this tremendous school of music and theater and the within the College of Visual and Performing Arts, but then also the possibility of what there could be. Brian spoke about wanting to build something, and that really resonates with me because I always, as someone who went into musical theater, I always looked back at UNCG and wondered, why isn't there a musical theater course of study at UNCG? There's this amazing school of music and amazing school of theater and dance and all of these fantastic pillars, and the discipline that really sits in the middle of all of that wasn't really represented here. And so I always had a passion and a kind of just what if, why couldn't UNCG have a leading musical theater program? And so that was a huge draw for me to get to come here and build on what I knew from the industry and create something here, a training program here that really responds to what's happening in the industry right now. And I was lucky enough to cast Broadway shows for 15 years in New York City. So to take what I learned from those audition rooms and look at the programs that are providing great training around the country and see why, and then be able to incorporate bits and pieces of all of that in our training program here, that was just a huge draw to me. So we're currently auditioning our third group of musical theater majors. We've been adding a class each year. And we're at a point now where our acceptance rate is under 4%. We have so much interest in the program. So we're just seeing a really tremendous amount of auditions, really, really talented people. Our reach is, last year we saw students from 26 states auditioned for us, and we're on track to see a good bit more than that this year. And the word is out, and so that's really exciting to have come here at the right time and receive the support that the university has given to this new program. It's really just a culmination of everything I'd kind of hoped it would be.
And you have brought your wife and had 2 children here.
Yeah.
Is there something special about Greensboro, sort of outside of your professional world,
Well,
that you enjoy?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and also, I lived in New York City for 16 years, and I don't make any, I love New York City, but I don't make any apology or secret of the fact that I was ready to not live in New York City at a certain point in my professional career, and more than that in my personal life. And so yeah, we have Marco and Caroline both go to UNCG. They're 5 and 2, but they attend the UNCG Child Care Education Program, Child Development Center here. So they are moments away from my office, and my wife has been lucky to work from home and keep the job that she had when we were in the Northeast. So it was really just a great, as we looked at places that we wanted to raise a family, a big part of that was looking for places that had a presence of the arts, had good restaurants. We were living in New York City, so we wanted a place that we felt could kind of support things of what we loved about living in a big city, but not living in a huge city anymore.
I love that. And I think that, if your children need to go into the arts, they can go to Northwest.
I know that now, for sure.
You know the track now. Exactly.
Exactly.
Well, shifting back over to Gopher County Schools, Donnie, something that I wondered when I was hearing about the impact that you and Brian are making in the programs that you work on is our listeners, our residents, their business leaders. How can we support your programs and music at Gopher County Schools?
Sure. So I think there are a couple of ways to support us. When things return back to normal, or whatever the new normal is when we level off, reach out to the local schools and see when productions are, when we're having concerts or dance performances or anything like that, and come out and watch. Most of us have performances that are free and open to the public, and we would love to have community members come and create connections. If you have money to donate, all of us will gladly accept donations. And partnerships are a wonderful thing. We have many schools in the county which are doing great things and all have their own different flavors. Whether it's our arts magnets at Weaver Academy or Penn Griffin, or any of the traditional high schools or middle schools, all of the directors are doing something that is interesting and would really benefit community members getting involved and community businesses getting involved in a way that would help both things, that would help the program. We've had a wonderful relationship with More Music Company in downtown Greensboro in supporting the orchestra festival that Brian and I put on. We put on a statewide orchestra festival every year, of course, not this year, but in other years. And More Music has been a sponsor. And of course, we want to recognize what they've done for us in helping us put on this festival. So just looking for connections. It's something which the businesses can say, wow, look at this great thing we're supporting, and we will be very thankful to have the support.
Awesome. And I know that More Music is a great chamber member also. So they're a good community business all around. I see them on my route to work every day on Market Street. So thanks for giving them a plug also. So I have one last question for you, but I wanted to hold it just in case you had something that you wanted to share on this podcast, whether it was something we missed in the conversation or there are keyboards on the screen. So I'm just going to open it up to see if there's anything that anyone wants to share verbally or musically.
I'll let Dominic play you a song.
Yeah. Well, I would love to just say, kind of dovetailing off what Donnie just said, the art sector has been hit really hard over this last year, as we all know. And sadly, just because of the inherent risks that are part of this strange world we're all living in right now, when it comes to sitting in an audience and singing live and all playing instruments, all of these things that we rely on, the arts sector will be one of the last things to bounce back. So I would just encourage your listeners to think about any opportunity to support the arts, and I'm hopeful that we can see a groundswell of support when things get back to normal, because a number of arts organizations will really need it. Schools, theaters, orchestras, you name it. Everyone is going to need support to get back going. And the arts are a tremendous financial boom for an economy. And that's, I don't feel like we're talking about that enough as a culture. We're supporting other industries and ignoring the arts, which typically contribute a much higher dollar amount to a city. So I just hope that we can start to turn the conversation a little bit more to how we help these organizations that are going to be in such dire need of support as we turn the corner here, hopefully this summer.
I think that's a great point.
That's my little, I'll get off my soapbox now, but I think about this a lot.
No, I'm glad that you did. And I think it is so important to have that conversation right now between, Tanger Center has been delayed, and the Triad Stage and the Symphony. And so many of our small arts organizations have really been hit by not having attendees and not having their fans come and participate. And so Arts Greensboro has done a great job of providing artist grant relief funds to these small organizations. And I know that they're raising more money to make sure that when we get on the other side of this, we have the same number of our organizations that can really provide so much color to our community and to all of our individual lives. I'll also mention that they produced a report about the annual economic impact of arts in the community. And it really is tremendous in terms of what you all bring as artists and those that support all of the art organizations they bring to our community. So I think that's a great point. So I want to ask you finally each, how can we watch the Grammys, and how will you be watching the Grammys, and when are they? So Donnie, you had mentioned the date. Tell us the date.
Yes, so the Grammys have been pushed back to March 14th. They'll be broadcast on CBS. And I plan to be surrounded by my family, and we'll watch and see how it goes.
And what time is it? Did you say that?
I don't know that, but I'll look it up.
Okay. Brian, how will you be watching?
I'm sure I will be watching, TV at home, friends, family. We don't know if we'll be there, so we haven't found that out. That would be a great thing, right? But I'll definitely be watching regardless.
It sounds like it's March the 14th at 9 p.m. on CBS. All right. So, and I'm sure that your students will also hopefully be watching, maybe on their own or in a Zoom room together.
I would like to think so, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they're rooting for both of you. Dominic, how will you be watching?
I'm going to be at home too. I don't think, I suspect that there won't be trips to LA for Grammy viewing in my future. And so, be at home, just, crossing my fingers and seeing how it goes.
Well, we will all join you on the 14th of March at 9 p.m. to watch the Grammys and root for Greensboro's Grammy nominees. I'm really thrilled to have the three of you join me today to talk about Greensboro as a place that incubates music talent and that brings back music talent as boomerangs back to our community, and is a special place not only for those that love the arts, but want to have a thriving arts community for our children and for our community at large. And so thank you. I think that we're not surprised now that Greensboro was per capita on the list as hub for music and Grammy nominees. And so we'll see you virtually and you're on the screen on March the 14th at 9 p.m. CBS on this year's Grammy Awards.
This podcast is brought to you by True Federal Credit Union. a modern, mission-driven financial institution focused on the needs of its members, the businesses it serves, and our community. With 5 locations in Guilford County, including a dedicated commercial lending office at Friendly Center and a highly rated mobile banking app, Truliant makes it their business to help you grow yours. Visit Truliant.org for more information. You can find all of our episodes on YouTube thanks to our video sponsor, North State.
Make sure to subscribe so you'll get new episodes delivered to your device each week. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at GSO Chamber. See you next time.